Let me pose something to you. If I tell you without any other details, a team turns the ball over 5 times, as in once for every finger on your hand, do you think they're going to win the football game? SMU found a way to do that. 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles this year. So they're vying, SMU and Pitt are, for that number 3 spot in the ACC, and they face off this week. I can't wait for that one. I don't know how much national hype it's going to get. It will not be under discussed on this show. This is just the first time I'm talking about it this week. Won't be the last. Because SMU and Pitt have the same number of conference losses right now as Clemson and Miami. Meaning the Hurricanes and the Tigers, they better be careful because they're just lurking. Someone's still going to be unbeaten. Someone's going to pick up another quality win. Here's why I trust Pitt more than SMU. If I assess, which I am, of course, the mood of the SMU fan base, what I think it should be after that win against Duke, it's a no vibe. I know they won the football game. They deserve credit for that. This was not a game, if you missed it, that they could have lost or had opportunities to lose, but it went back and forth. This is a game that if you knew how it played out and the number of times Duke had an opportunity to win the football game, you would bet your life savings Duke won the game. SMU found a way. I'm not trying to take that away from them. But that formula that they put on display in Durham last week, not sustainable. They turned it over 5 times. Pitt has turned the ball over 6 times all season. Holstein's thrown 5 picks and they've lost 1 fumble. Kevin Jennings threw 3 interceptions. They could not function inside the 10-yard line. Those sorts of things can be cleaned up, but Kevin Jennings has to get the hero ball out of him. Pitt, on the other hand, is just solid. They just look like a solid football team. I don't think they're in the Clemson-Miami realm. They haven't proven that to me yet. But what they have proven is they can win close games. They have come back after trailing by a large margin against Cincinnati earlier this year. And their defense can be utterly dominant at times. Ask Kyle McCord, who was a phenomenal passer, or at least looked that way until he went up against the Pitt defense. And SMU is more offensively driven. Pitt a little more defensively driven, perhaps. But I think Pitt plays a much closer brand of complementary football than does SMU. But still, I like SMU, and I haven't made a pick on this game yet. But those are the 2 teams that are vying for that next spot in the ACC. And I give Pitt a really nice lean win after last week. But it's a no vibe, bordering on lean lose for SMU because it's not they could have lost the game. They should have lost the game. They had to block a 30-yard field goal with 3 seconds to go. Heck of a special teams play. Leaps over the guy, does not touch a single lineman, blocks it, gets it to overtime. But SMU was shaky. SMU was very shaky. And every time I watched Pitt in the last few weeks, pretty impressed. Pretty impressed. That game is going to be wildly fun. Here's a name for you that I just want to throw out there that picked up call it a no vibe win against Georgia Tech. But do you know who only has 1 conference loss on the year? Virginia Tech. Now, if you remember the commentary about the Hokies coming into the season, it was that they're a dark horse to win the ACC, which they were. Some people, like myself, predicted them to win in the 9 to 10 games range with the schedule that they had. But they lost to Vanderbilt, they lost to Rutgers, and everyone in Blacksburg, sigh, here we are again, waiting to get back. Well, suddenly, you look at Virginia Tech and go, well, wait a minute. They've only got the 1 conference loss. I mean, teams like Louisville have got 2 of them, for instance, and they're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination. They would need some help, but remember, they play Syracuse this week on the road. That's a tough game. But next week, they host Clemson. Do you realize that Virginia Tech could, in a very realistic scenario, control their own destiny to get to the ACC championship game? Because if they win that game against Clemson, they've got Duke and Virginia after that. Those are both winnable games, though going to Duke, as SMU will tell you, is very tough. But Virginia Tech is someone that most people probably kind of wrote off and realized, they're not going to be as good as we thought they could be before the year. But they've been playing better at the very least. Defense was stifling, albeit against a backup quarterback for Georgia Tech over the weekend, but he gave up 6 points. How do you want your defense to play when an opposing team has got the backup quarterback in there? So no team had a better weekend than SMU because they escaped with that particular victory. But just just keep your eye on Virginia Tech. If they can win at Syracuse this week, it's not going to be easy. Qs are going to be on a long rest because they played earlier in the week. They're going to be coming back home, and they are certainly going to be, let's just say, looking for a better performance with alacrity, given how they played against Pitt last week. I mean, 3 pick sixes and a half. In a half! The Pitt defense was stifling to Kyle McCord, who had been one of the most productive quarterbacks in all of college football this year. We'll just see. Just if Virginia Tech can go win that football game this week, look out for the Hokies, because that could be a very interesting game at home. It's in Blacksburg against Clemson next week. Now, Clemson has been steamrolling everybody in sight, but just remember, this Virginia Tech team went toe-to-toe with Miami, who everybody, myself included, looks at as the team to beat in the ACC. But remember how that game went? The whole Hail Mary ordeal, I think it was correctly ruled. I'm just saying, don't tell me they can't play with the top of the conference, because I watched them do it on the road. What do you think they do at home? Got to get through Syracuse first and avoid that look-ahead factor. But I would watch out for Virginia Tech. Elsewhere around the ACC, Cal picked up a non-conference win against Oregon State. Maybe that gets them on the right trajectory. The Bears have just been the Bears. They snapped a 4-game losing skid. They've got Wake, Syracuse, Stanford, and at SMU. Do you know what Justin Wilcox teams have had a tendency to do over the years? Play spoiler, and frankly, have a schedule play out exactly as it is right now. SMU does not have the easiest schedule in the world going forward, because they've got to play Pitt this week, and that game is at home in Dallas, so that's better. But then they have Boston College at home, scrappy team. That's after the bye week. Then they go at Virginia, who's better than probably anybody thought. I mean, Virginia had a disappointing loss to North Carolina over the weekend. They kind of got housed on their home field. That's definitely a lean lose, if not an outright lose there for Virginia, because you had an opportunity to have a winning record in conference play. North Carolina's been struggling, but Criswell just kind of went and dealing on Tony Elliott's defense there. But I think that for SMU to still have to go at Virginia and host Cal at the end of the year could decide whether they get into the ACC title game, because they've got Pitt this week. But if they win that game, job's not finished. Job is not finished. So the ACC is getting wild. The ACC is getting crazy. And I don't think we've seen anyone firmly grasp onto that number 3 spot to push Miami and Clemson. I still think there's a gap between those top 2 teams and everybody else, but somebody's there. And Miami's looked vulnerable before. Is Clemson going to keep just boat racing everybody that they play? I don't know. We're going to find out this week. But Virginia Tech, SMU, and Pitt, get used to it. Someone's going to cling to that spot. I don't know who it is quite yet. But between SMU and Pitt, SMU had a great weekend because they were able to find a way to win the football game. Right now, I trust Pitt a lot more than I trust SMU.